My son started helping lonely neighbors after school. Then I found out he was taking their money. I never thought I'd have one of those horror parent stories until last month, when my 15-year-old son Jake started acting like a different kid. He was bringing home straight A's for the first time. He was doing chores without being asked, and even bringing me flowers from the school greenhouse. I should have been happy, but it felt wrong. Jake had been a C and D student his whole life. Then our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, called me and said, "I think you need to see what Jake's been doing after school." I went to her house and she showed me her security footage. There was Jake walking home with Mr. Peterson, the elderly man who has dementia. On the video, Jake led him into our house, sat him at the kitchen table, laid out school books, then slid a checkbook in front of him. Mr. Peterson signed it with a shaky hand while Jake smiled and waited. Then Jake tore out the check, folded it, and walked Mr. Peterson home like nothing was wrong. Mrs. Chen said it had been happening for almost 2 months. I drove home shaking and searched Jake's room. Under his mattress, I found a folder labeled business records. Inside were photocopies of checks made out to Jake Morrison tutoring services. $50, $75, $100, dozens of them. Some memo lines said things like, "For Tommy's college." Then I found a composition notebook, and that was the part that made me feel sick. Jake had written profiles on elderly people in the neighborhood like he was studying them. Mr. Peterson forgets conversations after 10 minutes. Thinks I'm grandson Tommy who died in Afghanistan. Best approach? Mention college, never correct him. Mrs. Patterson, lonely, confused about bills, offer help. Mr. Rodriguez, lives alone, very trusting, likes basketball, ask after food. He'd written out their weak spots like a plan. There were dates in the margins, little notes about what worked, what made them cry, what made them trust him faster. One line said, "Bring up late wife if needed." Another said, "Wait until they're relaxed." When Jake got home, I had everything spread across the kitchen table. I expected panic. Instead, he looked at the checks and notebook and just sighed. "We need to talk," I said. He sat down and said, "Okay." I held up the folder and said, "This is stealing from confused old people." He leaned back and said, "It's not stealing if they're happy to give it. Mr. Peterson thinks he's helping his grandson. Mrs. Patterson says I'm the only person who visits her. Mr. Rodriguez makes me sandwiches and tells me stories. They like me." I said, "They're sick, Jake. They don't understand what's happening." And he looked right at me and said, "But they feel useful when I'm there. Nobody else gives them that." He said it so calmly that it scared me more than the checks. I asked if he felt bad at all, and he shrugged. "Would you rather they sit alone, staring at a wall?" he said. I told him to stop acting like this was kindness. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, if their families cared so much, they'd be there instead of me. There was no shame in him. He sounded proud. I called Adult Protective Services that night. By the next afternoon, they were at my house with a detective, and once they started digging, it got worse. Jake hadn't just tricked Mr. Peterson. He'd been doing it to at least 3 other elderly neighbors, changing the story for each one. One woman thought she was helping family with car repairs. Another thought she was donating to a team. He'd searched their families online and used dead relatives, old memories, and personal details to make each lie believable. The total was over $3,000. Then the school got involved. Jake had been forging permission slips to leave early. He told teachers he had a job helping seniors. One teacher had praised him for his community service. Even while the detective was in our living room, Jake didn't act sorry. He asked if he could have his phone back. When I told him to stop talking, he rolled his eyes at me like I was embarrassing him. Even after they told him he could face charges, he kept saying the same thing. I helped them. I made them feel less alone. Their families are the ones who abandoned them. Court papers started coming, and I kept asking myself how long he'd been like this. Then last week I went into his room looking for a sweatshirt and found another notebook shoved behind his dresser. Inside were new profiles, more neighbors, their schedules, their money problems, who lived alone, who felt guilty saying no. He hadn't stopped planning. He'd just gotten more careful. Then I turned to the last page and saw my name at the top. Under it, he had written, "Knows about others now. More careful approach needed. Best angle, college savings guilt. May pay to keep problem quiet." I stood there staring at my name like I was another target on his list. I grabbed the notebook, locked myself in the bathroom, and called the detective again. Now my family is saying I ruined his life by reporting him. Was I wrong?